So, first of all, thank you again for this great honor. Thank you for making this happen. Shalom to all of you. I wish I could be physically connecting, but we'll do the best we can spiritually, being that we're using technology to transcend time and space. So the advantage is we can communicate from all over the world. And I was not saying it as a joke. I meant it seriously. You are the future. You know, to me, it always comes down to, if you want to know if something's successful, you have to see if for the next generation embraces it or not. And that's the only way. You can believe in something, you can think it's true, you can be committed to it, devoted to it, but if you don't have an element of perpetuation, that it continues, something's missing. So to me, the great challenge always is, can you inspire young people? People who are just at the beginning of making their big choices in life, the choices of what they're going to do with their lives, who they will marry, what kind of family they will build. That's the challenge. So I feel this is an honor to be able to speak a few words to you. So let me begin with an interesting story that happened in connection with my book, Toward a Meaningful Life. And that story is, I wrote the book in 1995. It's a while ago, 25 years ago. So one of the editors that helped me, his name is Stephen Dubner. Stephen Dubner went on to write, you may be familiar with a big best-selling book called Freakonomics. A big best-selling book, Freakonomics, Stephen Dubner. But before he did that, he worked with me. He was a secular Jew. As a matter of fact, he grew up in a home where both his parents, who were Jewish, converted to Catholicism. They were practicing Catholics. They went to church every day. So I met Stephen, and he used to be a choir boy in a church. As he grew older, he began to look for his Judaism, and he became closer to Judaism. He rejected the Catholicism. It's a long story of its own. He actually wrote a book about it called Turbulent Souls, but I don't want to go into that right now. That's not relevant here. So Stephen Dubner, as I said, he was a journalist. He worked at the New York Times. So he was the perfect editor because I didn't want someone who already had preconceived notions and ideas. I just wanted someone who could be an editor, take the words and make them nicer. That was the main goal with Stephen. So that's what he did. When we came to the chapter in the book on the 3 chapters that talk about the issue we're going to address here, one is called marriage, love, and another 3rd chapter called intimacy, the soul of sexuality. So I remember one night he calls me up, it's around 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, and he says to me, you know, you're destroying my relationship. I have a girlfriend, and I thought I was getting along with her. I thought it was a very good match, but you're destroying it. So I said, how am I destroying it? Well, I don't even know who your girlfriend is. He said, because I'm working now in the chapter on love and on sexuality, and when I read it, I look at her and she doesn't live up to anything that the book is talking about. And you're writing about it so beautifully. And I start comparing and I start saying, she's not for me. So I said, what should I tell you? Anyway, a few weeks later, he tells me he dropped her because she did not live up to the standards of what Toward a Meaningful Life writes about love and sexuality. Anyway, a little while later, he got engaged to a nice Jewish girl and he got married. At the wedding, he invited me to the wedding. I was at the wedding and he asked me to say a few words. So I said, I want to tell you, even though I didn't directly connect husband and wife here, Stephen and his wife, what was it, Rachel, I think was her name, I forgot her name. Ellen, I'm sorry, Ellen. I didn't connect them, but I could say I take credit. And I told the story. I said, because of me and the book, he dropped the other one and he would never have met Ellen. Or not for that. The fact that he married Ellen means that she does live up to the standards in this book. So everyone had a good laugh. And as such, it was a very interesting introduction to this topic that I want to share with you. You know, when it comes to love and relationships, sexuality, it's like there's nobody that can live with it. And sometimes nobody can live without it. And sometimes it's difficult to live with it because it's challenging. It's very challenging. We live, I would say, in a time of crisis of intimacy. And what I want to address is that I believe that most of us have not been educated and trained what really is love and sexuality. What is it? Is it just the physical attraction of two people and then they have physical pleasure, carnal pleasure? Or is there something more to it? Because many people say, you know what? I can have a sexual relationship and I don't necessarily have to have commitment. I met a guy in New York, I know him very well for many years, and he says to me, you know, Rabbi Jacobson, I finally mastered the art that I could have a relationship with my girlfriend and there's absolutely no commitment. I said, really? Very interesting. And did you tell her about that? He says, no, she doesn't know yet. You know, he's keeping it like, so I said, well, let me know what happens once you tell her. And I wanted to cry because he thought it was an achievement that he's able to have a relationship without commitment. The fact of the matter is relationship means commitment. It's one and the same. But unfortunately, we live in a time where people have divorced the two. It's like two separate things. I can have a sexual relationship with someone and I don't have to have commitment. It's short term. It's a one night stand. It doesn't have to have something deeper. But in fact, when we do that, we're undermining our own potential and actually even our own pleasure and even our own true possibilities. And I'll explain why. But I want to share another interesting story. A number of years ago, I was invited to London, England. So they had a weekend of young singles, young professionals. London is a financial center in Canary Wharf. So there they had in a hotel Friday night. It was packed. It was over 1,100 people. A beautiful dinner, a 4-course dinner. It was like, a serious event. And they were all secular. But they came together. It was an organization that created what they called social, personal, and Jewish networking. That's what it was about. So it was professional and it was personal. And people came to see each other. That was clear. The rabbi tells me, okay, middle of dinner, so you see a beautiful table set, young couples sitting, not couples, singles, young singles sitting at the tables and speaking to each other and having a good time. He tells me, now is your turn to get up and speak. I said to him, they are not interested in me speaking. Whatever I say, they're not going to be interested. He said, this is your job. You came here, I brought you here to speak. So I said, 1,100 people, they're not going to listen. What's the point? He says, you know what? Every week I'm humiliated. Now you'll be humiliated a little. So I said, you brought me here to humiliate me? Anyway, I had no choice. I get up there and you don't imagine 1,100 people enjoying themselves in a party. They're not interested in a lecture. So I'm standing up there and I said to myself, it was a challenge. I said, so what do I do? What do I do? And I said, okay, here's the challenge. I have to get their attention in for 5 seconds. If I keep their attention for 5 seconds, then I can get them for another 5 seconds, another 5 seconds. And that way, I can communicate with them some message. So I get up and I said, okay, you know what? I'm going to take a little risk. I'm going to say something provocative. So I get up and I said, hello, everybody. Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom. Please, everybody, quiet, just a second. So for a second, they listened. I said, did anybody ever hear of Dr. Ruth Westheimer? Did anybody hear of Dr. Ruth Westheimer? And they did. Dr. Ruth Westheimer was a sex therapist who had a radio show in New York and really internationally, millions of listeners. She spoke 10 o'clock at night. I forgot what night it was, maybe Sunday night. And she spoke about sexually explicit advice. People would call in questions about their sexual issues and their relationships. And she spoke. She had this very thick accent. She came originally, I believe, from France. And yeah, so fine, everybody's looking at me. Very interesting. Why would I mention Dr. Ruth, famous Dr. Ruth? So I got their attention. And I said, you want to know something? I want to share with you a conversation that I had with Dr. Ruth. So now they were listening because they wanted to see, what am I going to say? And I told them I once met her at a dinner in New York. She's a very short lady. And we talked. She asked me who I am. She asked me, what do you do? So I said, for many years, I listened. I was a listener. I worked for the Lubavitcher Rebbe, who would speak on Shabbat and holidays. There were no recordings taken, no notes. So I would listen, and I would then remember verbatim what he said. And after Shabbat and after the holiday, I'd write it down and publish it. So she says to me, hey, you know something? We have something in common. Now, mind you, she's the age of my grandmother. So I was thinking, she's hitting on me? I don't know what it was. We have something in common. What do we have in common? So she tells me. Now I had everybody's attention. They had to hear this. And it got better. So she says to me, my most famous radio show, the most popular radio show I ever did, was about, I asked a question and people called in with an answer. What was the question? And I'm asking permission from the rabbi here. I hope he doesn't mind that I spell it out, but you'll see it has a happy ending. A question she asked to her radio audience. We're talking about millions of listeners, and everybody claims they don't listen to her, but the advertisers felt that they do. And they paid good dollars for advertising on her show. What question did she ask? What is the sexiest organ on the human body? The sexiest organ on the human body. And she said the calls started coming in nonstop. Like the calls are ringing and ringing and ringing. She said for 20 minutes, the phones didn't stop ringing. And everyone came up with their idea, what is the sexiest organ? She didn't tell me what they said, but then afterwards she says, okay, fine. After 20 minutes, we got everybody's opinion. She said, we're not taking any more calls. And then she said, nobody got it right. The sexiest organ in the human body is the ear, So I remember when I said this in the hotel dining room with over 1,000 people, people started looking at each other at their ear. I remember the men looked at the women at the men, and I could see people saying, you know what? I never thought of it that way, but maybe. Anyway, but Dr. Ruth continued. She said, no, it's not the physical ear. The sexiest organ in the human body is the ability to listen, to listen to your partner, to listen to the other person. That is the sexiest organ in the human body. So I said to the group, it was a big group, I said, so all I have to say, my message to you is that we're here together this Friday night. Let's all learn to listen to each other. Let's put aside our minds. Let's listen to the other person, respect the other person, and listen. So I say this to you because there's a very big difference. I don't know how to say it in Spanish, but I'll say in English, between sexuality and intimacy. Sexuality is an act. It's act. Many people focus on technique, on methods. Intimacy is a relationship. Intimacy means you're close to another person. Two people are vulnerable with each other, and they celebrate their vulnerability. So it's not less pleasurable, but it's connected to something that is sacred. They listen to each other. There's an element of getting your needs aside and really thinking and caring about another person. Looking at another person and say, I care about you. No, it's not just about me. I don't know how it is in your part of the world, but by us, there's a joke that says a guy goes on a date with a girl, and for an hour, he talks about himself. You know, he's very taken with himself, so he talks about himself. He's bragging, me, everything about me. After an hour, he turns to the date, and he says to her, okay, enough about me. So she breathes, oh, finally. But then he says, okay, so what's your opinion about me? So this is called a narcissist, a person who thinks only about himself. So first he talks about himself, and now he wants to talk about her. He wants to hear her opinion about him. This is not called a relationship. This is called a relationship with yourself, not with another person. What Judaism teaches, and especially the mystical teachings, and I read about it in my book, In Toward a Meaningful Life, on the chapter Intimacy, is that the fact that two people can come together and in a sacred union called a marriage can give birth to a child is because sexuality is intimacy. It's two people becoming like one. It's transcending your ego and your personality, not becoming more about you, but it's about another. Two people connecting to something greater than themselves. You know, in therapy, I deal with a lot of couples and singles as well. And people struggle with their challenges in their relationships. They have all kinds of struggles. Most people feel that my relationship is not working because my needs are not being met. I have needs. I thought my partner would fill my needs, and they're not filling my needs. Very few people ask the question, not what are my needs? So I ask the question to them always, don't tell me your needs. Tell me, what are you bringing to the relationship? What do you give? I know what you need, what you take. What do you give? And many people don't think like that because we grew up in a world that we were taught, if you want something, you have to go get it. It's like aggressive. There isn't the concept of, you know what? Maybe there's something you have to give, not just what you take. So in general, when it comes to a relationship, I will say there's like two models. Is love based on a need? That's like you need to eat, you need to drink, you need to sleep, you need clothing, you need shelter. So you have another need. It's called the need to have love. You need nurturing, you need reinforcement, validation, companionship, and yes, also sexuality. It's another need. It's a different type of need. Or is love based on not a need, but love is based on becoming something greater than yourself? That when you love another person, you learn to be greater than you are. So the general model, if you look in the world, without going into details, the general model of the Western world is the scientific, we'll call it the Freudian Darwinian model. It's about me. I need love. Therefore, I'm ready to give you something because you give me something. It's a transaction. The Torah model, in contrast, is very different. No, it's not about a need. It's about you bring me something I could never get on my own. You're not making me more. You're helping me relate to something beyond myself. When you have a relationship with someone, you have to understand they have a different way of looking at things. They actually allow you to become greater than yourself. So it's more about getting away, going outside of yourself, transcending yourself, rather than becoming more needy and more of yourself. It's a very different model. Now, the fact is, most people are selfish and they think in terms, what's in it for me? But the fact of the matter is that true love, and same thing with true intimacy, is not about you, it's about reaching a place that's beyond you. And when you come to realize how that works, you find the secret of true enduring relationship. And to put it in a simple formula, you talk about couples, people meeting each other, they usually talk about 3 levels of compatibility. There's physical compatibility. 2 people are attracted to each other. Physically, sexually, and so on. Then there's emotional compatibility. For example, you could see a model in a magazine that looks beautiful, but there's no emotional connection. So then there's emotional compatibility. You feel for the other person. They feel for you. The third is intellectual compatibility. So intellectual compatibility means you share ideas, you can communicate, you respect each other's minds, and so on. Now, most people would say, if I had those 3, it's perfect. Physical, emotional, and intellectual compatibility, what's missing? Well, one thing is missing. I'm going to call it spiritual compatibility. What is that? That you share a vision together. You share something that's greater than each of you. A vision means what kind of home you want to build. What kind of values do you stand for? What kind of legacy do you want to leave? What kind of mark in the universe? When people come into your home, what vibe, what message do you want to convey to them? So the first 3 levels, as important as they are about needs, about my need. I'm attracted to you. Emotional needs, intellectual needs. And the 4th is about giving, something greater than you are. And the key thing, and here's the real secret, when we talk about love forever after, do you believe in love forever after? So many people say it's a myth. It's fairy tales. It's stories of books and movies. There's no such thing as love forever after. Nothing lasts forever. That's what many people feel. Nothing lasts forever. When in truth, it's true. Food doesn't last forever. Money doesn't last forever. Even physical attraction, the first 3 things don't last forever. People, their looks will change. The way you look when you're 20 years old, you won't look the same way when you're 40 or 60 or 80. And emotional needs change, and intellectual needs change, because we get bored with people. We want new stimulation. So you meet someone else, you say, something fresh, and so on. But a vision, when you have a vision you share together, when you build something that's greater than each of you, that lasts forever. I have seen couples that are married 70, 80 years. Yes, that long. And you know what they share? They're not just conveniently, they say a marriage of convenience. They just stay together for the children, for the grandchildren. No, they love each other because the sparkle in their eyes, their connection is based on something that's greater than each one of them. And that does not change. That does not age. That gets stronger. So they can love each other even though they're not the same as what they were 20 years old or 30 years old. And that's the fourth dimension that Judaism introduces, the idea of a spiritual visionary connection, a transcendent love. And that's where intimacy is better, greater than sexuality. In the Torah, in Judaism, the word for sexuality, you know what the word is? Das, v'yada, to know. To know your spouse, to know. It's an interesting word. To be intimate is to know the other. Why? Because it's exactly that. It's about knowing each other. It's about connecting and bonding in much more deeper way than just two bodies. It's not just technique. It's not just mechanics. It's an actual soul connection of two souls becoming one. And when that happens, it's a deeper element than just your needs getting met. It's unfortunate, but we live in a world where sexuality, people have not learned what sexuality is. They think sexuality is a source of pleasure. And let me figure out how to get the best possible pleasure with the least amount of price to pay. That's what it comes down to for many. And it's so sad because the true secret of the pleasure of intimacy is it's not just when you're having sex together, it spills over into every aspect of your life. Two people can love each other even if they're not in the bedroom, even if they're not seeing each other, because their connection, they know each other. They know each other intimately. They know things about each other they only share with each other. So it's far more than just a technique, an act. They say sometimes the expression that for women, love is a noun, and for men, it's a verb. For a man, it can be an action. It's an action. You love someone, then you move on. You make love, you move on. And for a woman, it's a state of being. It's not an act. It's a state you're in. And that's the true definition of love and intimacy. It's not just actions. It's not just behavior. It's being in a place. It's like going inside and going underwater, and you're completely submerged in the beautiful relationship with another person. And that's why in Judaism, it's so vital that this be done in a sacred way. It's not like it's not casual. It's a true relationship. It's a commitment. You commit to two people committing and really feeling for each other in a real way. And you see, even people who are secular, who don't necessarily believe in a sacred union of a marriage, why are they so hurt when somebody cheats on you? You're not married, so you were together physically. So what? I moved on, I have someone else. Why are we hurt? Why don't we look at it like, you know what? Today they bought a loaf of bread in one bakery, now they went to another bakery. Because there's something about intimate relations that creates a connection. And nobody feels good when that connection is somewhat betrayed or in any way compromised, because it demands a connection is intimate. I could talk about this for a long time, as you can imagine, but I just wanted to give you a few key points about the difference between sexuality and the soul of sexuality. The soul, the neshama. Everything with a soul has a far deeper meaning. So yes, you can divorce mechanics and techniques from a soul. You can do a lot of things like that. But when you take away the soul of something, you lose the real vitality and vibrancy and true passion that comes with a really intimate relation. And that's why the Torah says intimate relations should be done in the sanctity of a union. You sanctify your relationship. It's not just two people coming together. It's not just it's about it's not just an act. It's about a relationship that is a deep connection. And we say there are three partners in this connection. There's the man, there's the woman, and there's God. And when they connect together and they make the commitment, it's a serious commitment that your goal is it should be eternal. It should be a love forever after. Yes, It should be something that never dies, that only gets stronger and deeper. Now, of course, there's a limitation how much one can convey in a Zoom call. This is a bigger topic. What I would like to just leave you with, and then we'll go to questions, is just plant the seed. Take your love and your intimacy seriously. It's not a small matter. It's not you're just going out and having a coffee. It's not a casual thing. It's the deepest part of your being, connecting with the deepest part of another person being. And that's a very holy thing. It's a very sacred thing, a very precious thing. It's comparable to going into the Holy of Holies. Yes, Kodesh Kodashim. The high priest in the temple, in the Holy Temple, only once a year went into the Holy of Holies because that is the most intimate connection. And so it's important to appreciate it and not take it lightly. It's a very serious thing, and I encourage you, especially as singles, and you have your bright future ahead of you, study about it, read about it, check out my book on this chapter on intimacy, find other literature, read about it. You'll be surprised that you'll learn beautiful, beautiful things about enhance who you are as a person. Can you imagine reaching the most intimate part of who you are? And that's why it's connected to such deep pleasure, because it's reaching the deepest part of who you are as you connect with the deepest part of another person, as you connect with the deepest part of God himself. Can you imagine? And that's only in that situation. So it's something to really appreciate and respect and learn about, and therefore, and that will help enhance and develop who you are as a person, your own potential of your partner, and potential of both of you together, and hopefully find each of you to find, and it's a blessing as we go to the new year, to find your soulmate, someone you can spend the rest of your life with, beautifully connected on a physical, emotional, intellectual, but above all spiritual, transcendent level. And God bless you all to build healthy families and families that will continue on in the same spirit. So I will still say final words after we finish, but I think here we'll pause, and I'll be happy to take questions as was suggested. I think, let's see, time-wise, yeah, perfect timing. Good. So I hope my words were meaningful and helpful to whatever it is that you're traveling through in your life. And please take it away. I'm ready to answer anything you'd like to ask. And don't be hesitant, don't be bashful. You can ask anything.
You mentioned the three layers before the spiritual one. And these layers are more transactional in the way you described it. Now, I don't know exactly the English version of it, but we say in Hebrew that אם אהבה תלויה בדבר, בטל דבר בטלה אהבה. So,
do people know Hebrew here in this group?
No.
Some yes, some no. I just don't know what is the exact, the literal translations for that. So, if a love is depending on a substance, the substance go away, then there's no love. So, with that,
let me translate it. Let me translate so everyone understands. It means conditional love. If love is based on a condition, if the condition is gone, the love will go.
Yeah. So having those three layers first, to build this foundation, to get to the spiritual part, life is dynamic. And at some points in life, those transactional parts could break for whatever reasons. And so that conditional part in those transactional ones are broken. And even though you met maybe the spiritual part at earlier stage in your relationship, but now you have these broken parts underneath. How do you deal with that in that concept?
I think if someone has that situation, then they don't have the spiritual part. These aren't four different parts. The spiritual part enhances all the parts. I met a couple, I mentioned before, they were both in their early 90s. They're married for almost 70 years. And you see them, they're like two 20-year-olds still in love. And if you ask them, are you attracted to each other? Absolutely. But she's an old lady today. Yeah, but I'm an old man. Emotionally, do you connect? Yes. And when you start digging and looking, you'll see, why is it that age didn't make a difference? Why did he not mind as she got older and didn't go look for a younger woman? Because he had a connection with her that was deeper than just looks. It was based on, they both shared that they wanted to build a family actually of children who would go out in the world and bring Judaism to others. That connection, therefore, together with others, did not allow them to just worship looks. If you only have something, I would not call it transactional, frankly. I would call it conditional. Looks change, that's a fact. Nobody at 80 years old looks like they're 20 years old. The same thing, emotional changes. So what happens is, these changes, if you have nothing else but these elements, so as they change, your love can change. But when you have the foundation, then even though things change, your relationship is not just built on that. So if the foundation of a building is strong, even if you change the paint and the color of each room, and you refurbish and you refurnish and you renovate, but the foundation is there, so the renovations change, yes, fine. Things change, but there's a solid base which keeps you together. And you see this, I'll just give a simple example in business even. Two partners may not even like each other so much, but the foundation of their business is very sound. So they say to themselves, you know what, we may not like each other, but our business is working. So why would we break it apart? The success of this business keeps us together, even though some other things may not be so perfect. That's how I would phrase the structure of this. You have your priorities in place. And when your priorities in place, other things become not as vital. But trust me, if a relationship is only based on looks, as soon as the looks change, the relationship will change. That's how I would respond to that.
Here I'm having some questions in private. So I'm going to ask you if you have any advice how to look for this when we are dating, and how do we know that we have found our soulmate?
Very good question. I will tell you, actually, to make it easier, I'll respond, but I have actually a document. If you go to my website, meaningfullife.com, and type in those words, how do I find my soulmate? You'll have, I think it's a document of 20 questions to ask yourself. And I'll share some of them, but you have there the full list. Generally speaking, a soulmate, as I said before, is not just about immediate needs. If you're running a business and you need now a vendor to provide you, let's say, with cell phones. So fine, you get the cell phones, it's over, you don't need them anymore. A soulmate is about soul. It's finding someone that's compatible with you, that thinks more than just the immediate. Like if you meet someone and says, what do you dream about? They say, I'd like to have a home with 30 rooms. And then I'd like to have a country home. And then I'd like to have 2 cars. That's beautiful. And if you both share that, that's great, but that's not a soulmate. That's a partner in the comforts of your lives. What would be a soulmate? A question if you ask, the man asks the woman or the woman asks the man, what would you like to see our lives look like in 20 years from now? What would be the answer? If the person says, have a lot of money and we can travel everywhere, again, that's a nice thing, but it's not a soul thing. A soulmate would answer, I would like to have a few children. I would like them to be brought up in a way that whoever looks at them says, wow, what kind of beautiful people they are. I'd like to have a generous home, a home that's alive. We have guests where we talk about ideas, where we share some higher values. These are examples of soulmate questions. So really it comes down to temporary pleasures and benefits or more longer term. Anyone that's talking about leaving a mark and saying, here's what I would like to leave in this world, that when I finish living in this life, the good life, I will have left and accomplished ABC. Those are people who talk soulmate language. Now, a lot of people don't speak that way. But that doesn't mean you can't open the conversation. You'd be surprised because we live in a world, again, a very materialistic world. People measure success by things you can measure, that you can touch. Success, a big home, a lot of money, a good job. I travel. I have luxuries. Very few people will say success, I am a generous person. I'm a good person. I bring goodness to other people. People who meet me feel empowered. I help. I offer and volunteer. Things that are transcendent, again, in nature. So basically, soulmate is connected to transcendence, and that requires conversations like that. I have found situations, even people didn't begin looking for a soulmate, but once they began to ask these type of questions, they suddenly realized, oh, you know what? I really respect this person. She or he has higher values. That's the beginning of the questions that I would suggest in looking for a soulmate. It's all about the right questions, not the answers. You have to ask the right things. Remember, soulmate is also connected to your own soul. You have to ask yourself as well that question. What do you dream about? What are your goals? What kind of contribution would you like to make to this life? That's the short of it. And check it out on the Meaningful Life. I have a whole list of good questions to ask. Okay.
Thank you. Here I have another question. You were saying that it's important that sexual relationships are done like in the right time. So how do you know when you are dating if the sexual relationships are going to be good when you get married? And this is a girl who is asking because some men want to try the milk before they buy the cow. What to do in this case?
Okay, very good question. It's not an easy question to answer because we live in a world where there's a lot of pressure. There's peer pressure, social pressure. And it's true, to be very blunt, yes, if a man can get the milk without the cow, why would he need the cow? You know, if you can get your cake and you don't need to have the whole package, women naturally don't feel that way. They say the difference between, and I think it was Marilyn Monroe that said, of all people, she said that men get married in order to have sex and women have sex in order to get married. For some reason, women are more naturally inclined to commitment. Maybe because the woman is the nurturer, the woman carries a child for 9 months. I would love to know what would happen if men had to carry a child for 9 months. We wouldn't have any children because it would be too inconvenient. So a woman by nature seems to be far more natural to intimacy and to love in the true definition. But unfortunately, women are forced to play the game by the rules of men. And you feel like you're dismissed. People will say, what's the matter with you? What's the matter with you? You know, if men are truly honest, many will say, yes, they date in order to have what they want to get at the end of the date. So I'll just I'll be very blunt and very straightforward, both to the men and women on this conversation. It's very nice and good to have pleasure, but if you really want a healthy, long-term happiness that will last more than 1 night and 2 nights and 3 nights, and that you don't want to be miserable, because basically if you get your sexual needs met, but there's no commitment, you'll get your pleasure like a drug. You'll be happy for that moment, but it's not lasting, and you'll need more and more. However, if you're wise and you choose the option, I want to build a relationship with someone. So you know what? Hold up with the sexuality. It's not the beginning and end of a relationship. It's the most beautiful part, and you should have a very good sexual, intimate relationship with your spouse, but it's not the beginning and end. I tell this to many couples. I say, as soon as you sleep with each other, trust me, the relationship will change. Because now it becomes bedroom politics. You're rejecting me, you're not rejecting me, where are you? Expectations start building. And tell me if anybody would disagree. But we live in a society where it became such a given. So I would make a little radical suggestion to you. Try something new. Date someone and have a conversation without the goal of being together physically. Without the goal. The goal is to get to know the person. Listen to her, let her listen to you, have a conversation, and say, you know what? We all are sexual creatures. We all would love to have sex. But you know, I'm looking for a relationship that's going to be more than just a physical one. I want a full relationship. And if you're a person who's willing to explore that with me, we'll have the best life possible. Make it an adventure. Not that you don't have to sound like a prude or like, you know, you're so scared of this. No, be courageous, be strong, whether it's the woman or the man. And together say, let's try something. Let's try an adventure here. You know what? We may discover something we never learned before. We're all used to that experience that you get together and ultimately, you know, it has to end in some physical connection or else something's missing. So the answer is no, not necessarily. You get to know each other. To know each other. The word knowing each other. You create that, I can assure you that the intimacy will be deeper and longer lasting and not one based on pressure and politics and so on. Now, so I know the other part of the question was, but how do you know? How do I know we're sexually compatible? I know my answer, you may not like my answer. Since when is there such a thing as sexually compatible? It's also part of the myth of this society that we decided. You think two people who love each other can't figure out how to be sexually compatible? You think it's just a mechanical thing? You think it's based on certain physical features or it's based on love? Now, obviously, we all want to be with someone we're attracted to. But when you have love on all the levels, I can assure you the physical will follow. But this is not the way we're trained. So I am saying some things that I know may not be exactly what you've heard in the past. Try it out. Now, I'm not here to preach to anybody and tell them who to sleep with, who not to sleep with, who, whether to get married or not to get married. That's not my job. I'm just offering you another option that, you know what, has kept the Jewish people here for 3,500 years. So something worked. Relationships worked. They had children, and children had children, and children had grandchildren. I would like to know the other type of hedonistic relationships, how many generations they produced. So the proof is in the pudding. You know, when you see a business that's been around for 3,800 years, you want to find out what's the formula that made it work. And you'd be surprised to find that they had the deepest love for each other, deeper than the ones that just have sexual attraction. So sexuality, just to sum up, is a very vital and maybe the most vital point, but it's not a compartmentalized piece of the puzzle. It's part of a full relationship. That's my general take on this.
I think
Everyone has been
you answered this question, but a guy is asking again, like, what's wrong with sleeping together before marriage?
I'll just talk psychologically. I won't talk about it from a religious point of view. I'll say that at the end. Psychologically speaking, once people are intimate with each other, something changes in the relationship. And if you're not really ready to commit, so what you have is, what usually will happen, after a while it will fall apart. This is how I've seen it. Now, not always. I've seen people who were intimate with each other and then they married and they have beautiful homes. So I'm not going to say it's not possible, but it also makes it less likely. Because if you're committed with each other, remember, intimacy is commitment. So why not commit all the way? Why do you, if you think sleeping with each other is the ultimate experience of two people together, why not first make a commitment and do that? I would ask the question the other way around. Because I'll tell you why. You want to see how it works. And then maybe you continue, maybe you don't. In other words, the commitment isn't really there. You know, let's be honest. If there were no contraceptives, if there was no pill, if there was no ways of birth control, what would happen when a man and woman are together? You know what? They wouldn't be able to be sexual because she could get pregnant. And who wants pregnancy? So we have now ability to hold up the pregnancy. In other words, we found a way around. But you know, there's a reason for that. Because intimacy is part of commitment. So I know it's hard to accept, but I have to really offer you another way of looking at things. And I'm not saying it's easy. And I'm not saying that you have to follow what I'm saying, but you're asking me. Psychologically, I would like any one of you sit down privately with a man or woman and say, what happened to your relationship once it became intimate? So on one hand, it may have become more beautiful and you look forward to it. but I can assure you it changes. It changes. And commitment is not necessarily going to always follow. So I would say that if people are ready, really ready to be with each other physically, why not commit to each other? Why not be part of the whole, a whole full relationship? You know, again, does that mean that that's the only way? No. Now, from a religious point of view, the Torah does say that be intimate in a sacred setting, because intimacy is sanctity. It's holiness. And holiness is there when two people are married with each other and God is with them together. If sexuality was just about pleasure, then you do what you want. But if there's sanctity to it, there are rules to the game, so to speak, of how you make sure it's sanctified. I could elaborate more, but I think I said enough. And I highly recommend looking at my book, Toward a Meaningful Life, the chapter on intimacy. I'd speak about this a bit more. But I want to just say again, I'm not trying to tell anybody what to do. I'm just trying to introduce another approach and think about it, absorb it, and you'd be surprised. Maybe they'll open up interesting new possibilities.
Thank you. Benny was raising his hand.
Go ahead.
There is so many people, I don't see where is Benny in the Philippines.
How many people are on this call, by the way?
101.
So, Rabbi, here I am. So by the thing that you're saying, it is a good thing that what is happening about social distancing and about being far from each other to a certain extent and things like that, correct?
Listen, the reason we're social distant is not because of sacred reasons. It's because of the virus. But yeah, if you want to put it that way.
But it's a good thing to a certain extent.
You know something?
Way.
Yeah. No, let me just comment on that. I can tell you in my experience with couples and people who are partners, when they are forced to they're unable to be close to each other physically, they're forced to have conversations. It actually enhances their relationship. They learn about each other. Do you know how many people feel the only way, if I have an argument with my spouse, we'll resolve it through having sex? Sometimes a conversation is a good thing. Sometimes being able to be intimate and connected, not always through physical behavior, is actually enhancing. So in that sense, yes, the quarantine has offered opportunity to sometimes, not only frankly on a romantic level, even friends. I know people who've created relationships on a much deeper level. Even in my work, people are far more receptive to the messages because you know what, when you're running to a restaurant or to a baseball game or to the theater or summer plans or flying here and flying there, you're so busy, you don't have time for the intimacy of a connection of a relationship. Now, people want to hear, they want to speak to you, they want to share what they're feeling, they feel vulnerable. So I know I didn't want to cut you off, but I wanted to confirm, yes, what you said is accurate.
Yeah. So in terms of dating, with all these Zoom and people being so far away, in other Zoom events, I've heard questions about if we like each other and we are so far, how do we do? The other person wants to meet in person. If not, they call it off. Or I want to call. So how do we cope with all these not being able to meet because I am in another country and she's in another country or vice versa, whatever. So how do we do?
You think I have answers to all the questions?
You seem like a person with wisdom. So I hope you have.
Part of wisdom is to know that you don't have. Part of wisdom is to know you don't have answers to everything.
Right, but most likely you have an advice for people who are
it's a good question. I have to say is, look, we are all in many ways challenged. I used to go to Israel several times a year. I have people to meet there and other functions, and I just can't. So I say to myself, look, God in his mysterious ways wants it to be this way. So we have to find innovative ways. Look, I think the following. There is a limited possibility, obviously, to also travel a bit and connect. But if people are dating and let's say via Zoom, and being that they don't have the physical proximity, so it's an opportunity to talk more and you get to know each other. And let's say two people really, really start liking each other. So there's going to be frustration because I want to meet you. I want to see you. So like in anything in life, it's a challenge to our discipline. You find out, okay, you know what? At this point, you can't meet. So it could be frustrating, but it doesn't mean that you can't find ways to connect on a deeper level. And then when the time comes that we're able to travel or we're able to meet in some way, it's far more gratifying. I don't have a quick answer because, I mean, I don't even know the statistics. Are more people getting married these days? Is there more dating? Is there less dating? I don't even look into it. I know, you know, I'm sure that on one hand, many more people want to connect. I think many more people feel alone and feel a need for companionship. On the other hand, there's all these limitations. You know, I've been to different weddings. They're very strange weddings that are social distance, small little weddings. So I don't have a quick answer. I would take it case by case. If anybody has a situation where they're dating somebody, let's say via Zoom or online, and they've come to a place where they're stuck, I would suggest calling somebody you know that you trust. I'm happy to advise if somebody wants to call me and look into the situation. Let's be creative and figure out maybe there's a way we can do something. Again, it's case by case. I don't know if there's a formula exactly because, listen, there are limitations. What can I tell you? But on the other hand, I think it's a great opportunity to appreciate relationships. I think a lot of people realize being single is not so pleasant all the time. You know, once upon a time, being single, I'm going to a bar, I'm going to a party, I'm going to a show, I'm going here. Now everything is so limited. So the social elements have actually caused people to really crave and want to have someone in their lives. It's very hard to be single in COVID. Can I tell you? It's even hard as a couple, but single it can be pretty challenging. So maybe this is a wake-up call to get our act together. Maybe there'll be what they called, you know, a baby boom after World War II. Maybe there'll be a relationship boom now in the next short while. Because, you know, this will end. This is not going to be endless. So we will never forget this time period. And I always say this, we don't control the events around us, but we control the events within us. So I have to tell you, if you are indeed serious and looking for a relationship and God is with you, I assure you that this is an opportunity to find someone. And yes, it's a far purer one because you cannot rely on physical intimacy. You can't use that as a crutch or other things. And maybe it's time to just talk face-to-face, not face-to-face, eye-to-eye with someone and really figure out each other. I know it's uncomfortable because many of us, it was very easy. You went to a bar, do you like a drink? Okay, you drink, you socialize, casual, and then you go and you're physically intimate. You know, that was one scenario. Now that scenario is not so easy because it's just, there's no bars to go to. You can't just do that. So maybe it's challenging us to dig deeper and figure out how to have human relationships on a more profound level. And I have no doubt that we will get there and it will be a blessing at the end. That's how I see it.
Thank you very much, Rabbi.
Rabbi, I have a question. Sorry.
Go for it.
Would you encourage people to start developing a relationship through Zoom, like a long distance relationship without meeting in person first?
I think it's a good beginning. Why wait? Why not? What's there to lose? The worst scenario is you really get connected and now you are can't wait to see each other. So I don't see any reason why not. I mean, listen, I do not believe this is going to last for years. It's lasting longer than we wanted and expected. But I would encourage because I think it's an opportunity for having a deeper relationship.
Can I add
because you can have real conversations. I'll tell you where the challenge is going to be. You're going to run out of material to talk about because how much can you talk about the weather? How much can you talk about Trump? How much can you talk about all kinds of other superficial things? But maybe this is it. Maybe it's time to start talking about things that really matter within you, what you really care about. So I would encourage it. I mean, I wouldn't go aggressive. You have to Zoom every night. It's a good way to begin. And hopefully within the next few months, there'll be opportunity to meet, and Zoom will be a distant memory. Or maybe you'll like the idea of Zoom. Sometimes it may be good for couples to have Zooms. That way they don't have the pressure of being on top of each other, so you just can Zoom. Say, you know what, let's Zoom.
Can I add something to you, Rabbi? Sorry.
Thank you.
I want to add something to what you just say now.
Sure.
That actually, and thank you for suggesting young people to continue with the with these connections. We started a few months ago, and it became, thanks God you asked me in the beginning of the lecture, it became very successful. And I think that even will be more successful, even if hopefully the pandemic is over, the COVID is over. I think this is something new that put together young Jewish people from all over the world. And we should think that actually this is a push from above, from God, to connect young Jewish people from all over the world.
Absolutely. There's no doubt in my mind. I can just tell you from my work that in the last 6 months, since March, Purim, I've probably quadrupled, 4 times as many people that I've reached to, because people are far more receptive and far more open to a spiritual discussion. They don't have the many distractions I mentioned. I'm going here, I'm going there. So I can tell you from my own work, I've never been as busy, and I've never had more conversations and communication with people virtual, not physical, virtually. So of course, you can never replace sitting right near each other, physically seeing each other, obviously. But this is where we're at. And one of the beautiful things Judaism teaches is when you don't control it, then be at peace. Don't aggravate yourself. This is where God wants you to be. He wants you to be on an island. And he wants you to be innovative and creative to figure out how to develop a relationship. Look, I don't know if I'd be speaking to you even, whether we even be meeting if it weren't for this whole thing. Maybe yes, maybe not, I don't know. My point is, here we connect. Who knows what this connection will bring? And I feel like very excited about it. Meeting new people, communicating, hopefully connecting. This would not be possible. Now, of course, we would have all preferred life normal as it was, but it's not the case. And one of the things that wise people figure out, it's like a good swimmer. When there's a storm, a good swimmer doesn't fight the storm. You float, you navigate, you wait, you go with the flow. A bad swimmer is going to fight the tide and get exhausted and drain themselves and can get hurt. So it's important to recognize this is where we are. Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, many of us will not be able to go to shul. So you can sit and aggravate, I want to go to shul, I'm used to it, I want to meet my friends. God is with you in your house too. You could hear the shofar on Sunday in a different way. And actually, it makes it more refreshing. It's no longer by rote. It's not mechanical. It's not like we're just going to go through the same motions. It's an opportunity to do something in a new way. I've been telling parents say, what do I do with my children? We used to go to shul, we go to synagogue, they had a play party, they had a children's party. I say, you know what, before holiday, before Rosh Hashanah, sit with your little boy or girl and say, let's come up with creative ways that we're going to make the Rosh Hashanah meal interesting. And it's a very good exercise. Parents and children are sitting. They never sat together to think about it because they relied on the school or on the synagogue. So we always look at how we see this as an opportunity and don't see it as a setback. And I think the same is true with relationships. It creates new opportunities. And, there'll be a time where we'll be able to connect better, and hopefully we'll remember what we learned during this COVID period. Yeah.
Rabbi, I wanted to add something. Personally, for me, it's like Corona or not Corona, it's kind of hard to meet people because I don't live in a country where there's a lot of Jewish people. So this internet dating is not something that's is not something that started with Corona for me. But in my experience, what happens is that people eventually just kind of get bored of it. Like the guys just get bored of talking to you virtually, not being able to hang out or date normally. and they just like end up getting bored, like just giving up, you know? So it has happened like so many times that now it's like, so like I'm kind of tired of trying because it always ends up in the same result.
Well, you know what? Maybe you haven't met the right guy yet who appreciates you and will appreciate you. What country are you in, if I may ask?
I'm in Colombia.
I would not give up on trying because it's your life. You don't want to give up. I would just maybe be more, with more discretion and get friends who really can suggest a quality person. You know, this is not an easy time, I agree. But I think there are quality people out there. And I cannot ever accept giving up. I would never give up on you. I don't think you should give up on yourself. I think you should see it's a challenge. You know, sometimes you have to just take a deep breath in. Maybe you take a little break. But I would look, you know, you have a good network here. I would look for people. People can, you never know, some the right person. There will be the person that will connect with you. I have no doubt. In this COVID era, it may be more difficult. I agree. But I'm not going to say to you, no, give up and that's it. It's over. God forbid, you know.
Thank you.
I would like to encourage Sophia and just let her know that I am thousands of kilometers away with no shul, no Jewish life, no nothing. And at least in Colombia, you have a shul, you have this, so don't give up, you know. I am in the Philippines, so what worse than that? I'm stranded, far away from everything. So there are worse things than being in Colombia, you know.
All right.
Don't worry, you're fine.
Everything is relative. Everything is relative.
I have a question here from another girl that she asked, how do we know we are ready for commitment?
It's a good question. I would say there's a few factors. Sometimes you just feel that you know enough about this person, and it's not like if you continue dating, you're going to find out much more. So it really comes down to what's the concern. Like I find a lot of people, everything seems to be fine, but they're afraid to say yes. They're afraid to go all the way and say, this is the right thing. Sometimes it's just fear of the unknown. So you have to really ask yourself, if the person is checking out and basically the main things you're looking for is there, and you don't have much to criticize, then you have to say to yourself, there must be some emotional resistance within you. And it could just be the fear of commitment, or you've been single long enough that you don't want to really get out of your comfort zone. And that is one thing. I would also advise talking to someone that you trust, because sometimes you could be blinded by your own prejudices, by your own subjectivity and biases. Another person could say, you know what, you really talk like someone that really loves that person, that really cares. And having another person like a sounding board can also be a tremendous asset to making that decision. And if there is a doubt and you really have a legitimate doubt, so you know what, you date a little longer and you see what happens. I think that the key thing is to know that making a commitment to a relationship is a leap. It takes some courage. It's not always comes so easily. Sometimes it comes easier than others, but if it's not coming easily, you have to look at what the factors are. Are there really objective reasons, or are there no really objective reasons? And then having the right people help prod you along and push you along. No one should force anyone. That's a few of the elements. And I think once you get to know a person, you ask yourself, so why am I not ready to commit? Do I not know something? What am I afraid of? And so on. That's the key way to gauge the next steps in that stage of the dating courtship process. Yeah.
Jacobson, how important is religion when you're dating? If one partner is more religious or less religious, is that a deal breaker? What are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts on that are very straightforward. two people are never going to be exactly in the same place. The key is that they're going in the same direction. So if one person, let's say, is Shomer Shabbat and the other one's not Shomer Shabbat, but they're going in that direction, they respect it. The big challenge is two people going in the wrong direction. One person is moving toward Judaism, the other one's moving away from it. So it's not so much being exactly in the same place, but in general, the mindset is we want to grow together. I think it's a mistake to people say, you have to be exactly as religious as I am, or it's not going to work, or the other way around. I think the key is direction. Direction that there's a like-mindedness. And listen, some people are going to become much more committed to kosher than they are to Shabbat. That's it. I find sometimes people think that the partner they're dating, their date, is not as religious as they are. You know what? You find out later they're more religious than this person is. So it's not such a black and white type of thing. The key is, as I said, direction. You're never going to find a perfect, exactly two people exactly in the same place. That's very rare. And that's what you want to look for. You want to see the mindset. If a person says, yes, I would love the idea of educating our children in a Jewish school, or I'm not there yet. You have to know what their values are. It's not just where they actually are, but where their goals are. That's how I would gauge this.
Hello, next question.
Sure.
Rabbi Jacobson, thank you for your time. Most of us are all just, regardless of level, trying to get it right. So could you give, my question, could you give a suggestion on a time frame, whether, regardless of Zoom or no Zoom, whether to end it or whether to commit, one more step forward?
I go back to what I said to the previous questioner. When you come to a point where you've dated somebody for a while, and there's now—
what is a while?
Whatever the while is. Time is not a factor here. You've come to a point where you have gotten to know each other enough. Maybe you dated every night for 2 months, or you dated every once a week for 3 months. I don't think time is a factor at all here. It's about coming to a point where you more or less have gotten to know the person.
Right.
You're not going to learn much more. The things that will come later in life, you can't predict what will happen in 20 years from now, 10 years from now. So you have to come to a decision. I pretty much know who this person is, and you ask yourself one way or the other. Is it something that is absolutely a no? That's one approach. It's absolutely yes. If there's a doubt, then you ask yourself, why are you doubting it? What is it about the person that you're doubting? Very often people don't have words. They say, I don't really know what it is. So I say, you can't tell me one bad thing about her or about him? They say, no, it's a very nice person. I said, you can't find one flaw in another human being? That's a pretty interesting sign that you probably like that person a lot. So maybe it's your own fear. So you have to really determine on the merit of the issues. I don't think time is a factor. I don't think the amount of dates is a factor. It really comes down to, here's where we're at. We can go on another date, but I don't think we're going to learn anything. So what's the point? Maybe time has come to make a decision. Now, it could be your fear of commitment, or it could be an actual problem. You could say, you know what, after all my dating, I don't trust this person. She's very stingy. She's not kind. I mean, I'm talking about obviously big things. But if it's kind and the personality is someone you can accept, then you have to ask yourself, what is it? Some people say, I don't like how her nose looks. Or she doesn't like that he's balding or something. So is that significant enough to be a deal breaker? Maybe you have to look at the full package. So it's very hard to answer because it all depends on what we're talking about here. If someone tells me it's the way the nose looks or something more superficial, I say, what about the rest of the person? Why are you focusing on that when there's a whole package? If a person doesn't have much to say negative, then usually it's a sign that you have necessarily some fear of some unknown. Some people are afraid their mother or father won't like the person. So is that a factor? How much of a factor is that? I'm just throwing out to show you how many factors are possible here. So I would try to put everything on the table, try to talk about it with someone you trust so they can challenge you, and then see, what do we have? Is it an objective issue? Is it a subjective issue? Is it within you? Is it with the other person? Maybe you need another date or two to resolve certain things. I mean, there's a lot of ways to go. I find that if people are transparent and honest and not hiding behind anything, you more or less can come to a place. where you see, you know what, it makes very much sense, and maybe just my fear I have to get over. I'm not suggesting it's always easy. I'm just trying to establish some type of point of clarity and criteria.
Thank you again.
It was a real honor, and I hope my words really lead to the main thing, to find your soulmate and have a very happy, happy life. That's the most important thing.
Rabbi,
especially a new year brings new opportunities, new energy, and new blessings. So God should bless you all, and I will have my dancing shoes ready. Make sure you invite me to your wedding, wherever it may be.
Thank you so much. It was amazing.